Welcome back for another OG Show Live. Mr. Randall, how you doing?
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Reel Down.
Welcome back to another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs.
Hi, boys and girls. Welcome to, once again, the Bass Kayak
brother. This is the final cast.
Another segment of Chasing the Tide, your saltwater connection on the Paladin.
Welcome back, everyone. Another episode of Feather and Fur. Your host, Brad.
Welcome back to the Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Crystal.
Hey, welcome back to Off the Water.
Happy Susie Q here with Adventures of Outdoor Woman podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Rusty Hook Kayak Fishing Podcast.
We're brought to you by Pelican, built tough for all situations. Go to pelican.com. Eastport Marina on the beautiful shores of Dale Hollow Lake. For all your lodging, kayaking, go to eastport.info. Yak Gadget for all your fine kayak fishing accessory needs. Go to yakgadget.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs. I am your co-host Sean, and with me, as always,
I'm Susie Q here. If you guys don't notice or realize, I'm in my she shed, baby.
Susie Q coming to you from the she shed.
That's right.
I know that was a long time coming, so that's awesome.
Oh my gosh. Yes, yeah. It's all the big stuff is finally done. Just need to do a bunch of little stuff and whatnot. I hate caulking. I hate it.
So it's still a work in progress. But
it is very much a work in progress. I'm definitely going to need to put in some, I don't know what they're called, like the sound diffuser.
Dampening.
Dampening panels or whatever. I can hear myself echo. So I don't know if you guys can as much, but
it's not horrible. But
yeah, but still definitely got some work to do. Got to paint the floors. Got to put the fan in the heater. Got to install the garage door opener. Got to install the insulation in the overhead door. Bunch of other like little stuff, but hey, it's coming along, so it's almost done.
It's better than my nice insulation background, but that will be changing hopefully before too long. But
right, yeah.
Anyway, well, we have another exciting show for you guys tonight. A little bit of a shift of gears for us. We're not going to be doing too much of a technique-specific show tonight, but I have a good friend of mine who I got to meet a while ago, and kind of got to learn a little bit about the role he plays in our local watershed and the surrounding waters, and so I'm really kind of eager to have him on and talk about what he does. Also, where he fishes and stuff, because I want to kind of pick his brain a little bit about that too. But I guess we'll just start off with the introduction. So welcome to the show, Ted Evgeniadis. Did I get it right?
That's it. Thank you.
Awesome. So for those of you who don't know Ted, which probably most of you, because I know him, but Ted, why don't you give the folks a little bit, just an intro of who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Ted Evgeniadis. Currently, I serve as your Lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper and have been in this role since 2017. I'm originally from New Jersey, so I've done quite a bit of fishing out there, and the Delaware River was my home river for a long time. So I came out here in 2008, and I winded up volunteering with the organization I'm now, acting as executive director for back in like 2011. So started out as a volunteer, winded up joining the board of directors, and then winded up being hired as the next Riverkeeper. So it's kind of like history in the making. It's been a dream of mine to work around water and especially around fish. Pollution is another side to it that is, there's so much going on in our watershed that hopefully we can talk a little bit about. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And, I love this area. It's an amazing place to live. We have an amazing fishery right in our backyards, and although I say I came here in 2008, I wasn't here to experience what the fishing was like back in the 90s or the 80s or before that, so And I'm sure most of the viewers know, the river has suffered, major casualties over the last 20 years as far as, the population of smallmouth bass. So, but, we there's plenty of fish in the river still. And, I know a lot of folks out there are catching them, and hopefully things improve so that we can rebound and have populations we once had.
Right. And I often think about that because, unlike a lot of anglers, I didn't start when I was young. I kind of got into this way late in the game. I grew up, I grew up 5 minutes from Shanksmere, our local outfitter. So I was literally a quarter mile from the river growing up, and I didn't fish. I it wasn't something that my family did, and I didn't know many people that did. So I didn't get a start, at it until way late in the game. So I've heard crazy stories about the amount of fish that people caught back in the day, just easy 100 fish days and stuff like that. And might have had just a glimpse of days like that early on. I guess I've really started fishing when I kind of met my wife, and my father-in-law had a bass boat, and I remember once or twice, this is in my 20s, so 20 years ago, dating myself a little bit, but having a couple of close to maybe 50 fish days, which still is crazy, to the point where my wife was like, "Oh my gosh, I got another fish on," and we're just like, "That's the whole point, that's what we're out here for." But yeah, so and I like to think that we're doing our best to kind of rebuild the fishery. It still is a world-class fishery, but if we can get it anywhere near close to back to the heydays, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So what I know you said you started volunteering for the Riverkeeper organization, right? And what led you to volunteer?
I actually went back to school. I was busy doing a lot of stuff just locally in York, around the city, and somebody had suggested that I get introduced to the Lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper, and I did, and he was doing really cool stuff. I got involved in some of my first creek cleanups, back then, some other projects, vegetation maintenance and control, pouring concrete to make parking lots, and cleaning up our waterways. And it was just something that I never really got the chance to experience before, and I was in my early mid-20s at the time. And I just saw it as a really cool outlet to meet, like-minded people that, cared about the water and were actually doing something about it. And it was just really, really attractive to me that there was groups and individuals that just really, had such a passion that drove them to do good things. And, I always, thought that that's the center of influence that I'd like to be around. And, I just got involved and went up from there. So it was a really cool experience at first. And it still is. I mean, this is the most rewarding and most, difficult and, job I've ever had in my life. And it's a blessing to have it. I mean, we have, we have the most water in the country other than, Alaska and maybe a couple other states. And, continuously we see water degrade and water quality suffer and public health suffer. And, we have to make sure that polluters are held accountable. And that, again, is attractive to me because no one should be taking away our right to clean water. No one should be taking away our right to swim or to fish. And when they do, there needs to be an advocate that's there, essentially fighting against that, because Pennsylvania has an environmental rights amendment. We're one of the few states to have it, and it grants us, the right to clean water and clean air. And we're very fortunate to have the amount of water that we do, but, it needs protected.
Right. And I know through my, volunteering with the Alarm Group, which is the Alliance for Aquatic Resources, I think, where we do creek studies. It just happens to be that the creek part that I study happens to be one of the worst in our area. So I get to see firsthand how nasty some of that stuff can be. But you've gone to bat for that and made some headway with that too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know where you're at. Sean's in one of the worst creeks we have, and we continuously see high nitrate levels. And we're monitoring the source of that pollution right now, which is a landfill. Further down, further upstream from where they're monitoring, and they're dishing out all kinds of stuff from high levels of boron, the nitrate levels, manganese, arsenic, uranium, lithium, PFAS levels. The forever chemicals are absolutely through the roof. Which now we're at the point where we've informed all the local municipalities, and we're trying to get public support behind what we're doing and continuous monitoring, and to make sure that people know, like, hey, don't bring your dogs down there. Don't bring your kids and your grandkids to go and splash around in that creek, because it's not safe. And people need to know that, because if people get down there and all of a sudden, years later, they wind up that they have some kind of, who knows what it could be. It could be a cancer, it could be an illness, it could be whatever. And all of a sudden, where do who's going to start asking those hard questions, and by that time it's too late. And again, our water is precious. We only have a limited amount of it, and when it's polluted, it's gone. And it takes a long time to get back the level of water quality maybe we once had. And Crates Creek is a very polluted creek, as we've seen it, and it does support wild trout. Upstream of that facility, you have trout that are there, and downstream of it, every single time I walk into that creek to test it, I don't even see a minnow swimming around. I don't even see a crayfish. I don't see it's void of life, just downstream from that pipe. So,
yeah, and not to mention that the water is kind of orange.
It's
just crazy. But that's the whole reason why we do what we do, and I can totally echo what Ted said about the kind of people that volunteer. They're so passionate about it. When we get together and we talk about our results and stuff, they're super passionate, super intelligent people that just want to make the water better for everyone. And I'm kind of super thankful that I got involved with that group, because it's so nice to get to meet people like that, and just to share and at least feel like I'm doing a little bit. But Ted, I wanted to ask you too about your fishing. Like, what's your fishing story? How long have you been fishing? Where'd you get started?
I since I was a little baby boy.
Okay.
I grew up around it. My family they're Greek. My dad came here from Greece. My mom's Greek. The whole family's Greek. My uncle was a big fisherman growing up. I used to go and sneak around into where he had his tackle and all his rods, and I'd go through all his stuff when I was 5 years old and 6 years old, and I was just mesmerized by all of his gear. And he does a lot of saltwater, and especially living in Jersey, I mean, he did a lot of saltwater fishing, a lot of offshore fishing. And I just got involved in it early as a kid. Once I got a little bit older, into my late teens, I started fly fishing. So at that point I was just, I set off for the races. I'm going up to upstate New York for salmon. I'm going now, go to Erie for steelhead. I'm doing offshore trips at least 2-3 times a year. I'm fly fishing, central Pennsylvania. We have amazing trout fisheries here. So, I'm smallmouth bass fishing, catfishing on the river, and other tributaries. I mean, I fish for whatever that swims. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy fishing. It gives me peace. I just love being on the water, and whatever water body that might be. It could be the ocean, it could be a lake, it could be a creek, it could be a river. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I'll fish for anything. And, like I was saying before, we have such a amazing place here that we have big fish. We were just talking right before we came on about, people catching 21, 22 inch smallmouth. I mean, that's amazing.
Yep. I have to give a shout out to my buddy Jake Stoffman. Took him out on the river tonight, and he came up back. He actually he went to college here at Millersville, and I got to know him and fish with him a little bit. He graduated and moved back to New Jersey, but he messaged me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I'm coming back to PA. Do you want to hit the water a little bit tonight?" And I was like, "Sure," and so we got on the water, and he's like, "Well, where do you want to go?" I was like, "I'll show you one of my spots." And so I took him to a place that I caught a 20-inch smallie last year, and he caught his PB 21-inch smallmouth. So that was quite a catch, and congrats to him. But yeah, I mean, I think you're surrounded by kindred spirits, at least here anyway. We love being on the water. You know, for me, I know I can definitely echo that sentiment that it's relaxing to me. It's my peace. It's where I go to get centered, you know, and to get away from all the stress. So I'm glad to hear that, you know, even though you do spend a lot of time in and around the water for work, that you still get to enjoy it as well. Maybe not as much as you would like.
Yeah. When I can. I mean, you know, I'm going out tomorrow, thankfully for a buddy. You know, we're taking a trip out, but you know, this job is extremely stressful. There's, like I said earlier, there's a lot going on in the Lower Susquehanna watershed in terms of pollution. But, you know, as an organization, we're just doing a lot with our programming, with our education, with events. I mean, we're hosting all kinds of different events and cleanups. And for a long time, it was just me for about 5 years. And we hired some staff this year. And so now we have someone in the office helping us out with really everything, you know, and she's a rock star. And, you know, we're slowly growing an organization that should be one that, you know, that has the resources and staffing to take on the biggest challenges this river faces. I mean, we're looking at, when I'm talking about issues, you know, we're talking everything from hydroelectric dams and relicensing of those dams. You got, you know, coal ash pollution, you got combined sewer overflow, you got diseases which affect smallmouth bass. We have concentrated animal feeding operations and slaughterhouses and non-point source pollution and agricultural runoff and, you know, stormwater issues. And, you know, there's just so many different things that affect water quality that, you know, we can do something about as a waterkeeper organization. And we can talk about waterkeepers in a sec and what they do. But, you know, there's a lot of pollution sources that, you know, they're not heavily regulated. You know, so, you know, stormwater pollution is major now, and we start seeing more and, you know, increased and frequent rain events. You know, it's hard to control, and people are doing the best they can, but we're falling short. And the same thing when we talk about, and we can get into it maybe later or now, but, you know, we're looking at, you know, more frequent rain events, you know, during the spawning season for smallmouth. You know, and I think it's now becoming a little bit more of a conversation than it has in the last 20 years because of what we're seeing. You know, go back for the last 5 years, we've had so much, you know, intense rain events where we're seeing like 3 inches of rain dump in 2 hours, and all of a sudden we're flooded out. And you know, how does that affect spawning grounds? How does it affect those beds when we get a huge flush and a huge storm event that's going to cause, you know, river flow to be, you know, so high and so forceful that it's just washing away beds, it's washing away the fry, it's washing away, you know, a next generation, you know, layer of fish. You know, it's you know, it's been studied. You know, people are, you know, biologists are saying, you know, climate change is going to affect the future of our fisheries just because of the timing of when they spawn. And, you know, as evolution may state, you know, maybe they adapt to that. Maybe spawning happens, you know, at a different time as time goes on. I mean, we don't know. The fish are pretty smart, and they can adapt or they die. And, you know, I think over time we're going to see some adjustments.
No, that's definitely an interesting point. I've actually had similar conversations with people talking about the high waters that we see in the springtime, you know, and it feels like it definitely is happening more and more. I mean, just spending time on the water, you know, knowing that I can only paddle so fast water. There's a lot of times in the spring where it's not paddleable. So, you know, that it's got to be affecting, you know, at least somewhat in some way, the spawn like that.
Yeah.
We've been definitely having that issue here. So I'm from Central Illinois, Ted, and there's a local river called the Mackinac River. And I'd say the last 2 years, we've actually gotten a little bit of a break from the constant flooding in the springtime. But I mean, for a long time, I want to say almost like 8-10 years, it would just be always flooded in the springtime. And so I got talking to a couple of buddies of mine, and they were saying that, yeah, because of the immense flooding in the springtime, the smallmouth populations just aren't what they could or should be, because they can't spawn. I mean, they could, but again, it's going to get washed away, or the waters are just too high. It's not suitable conditions. And so it's just really interesting to, see all of these effects that, they have on river systems.
So, Ted, you mentioned, that a lot of people don't realize that they have riverkeepers. How big of an organization is that? Do pretty much most rivers have riverkeepers, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So, waterkeepers, we're all around the world. There's over 300 waterkeepers on 6 continents, protecting like over 2.6 million square miles of water. And the name of the game is, we go after polluters when people are violating the law, and, water quality is suffering and being degraded, and, we're suffering. That's not right. And, a lot of times, we have state agencies and federal agencies that are in place to protect us and to protect our water. But, a lot of times they just don't get the job done. So, waterkeepers fill that void, and, we step in. We step in as the voice, as the watchdog, and as the enforcer to make sure that the laws are being followed. So not every river has a riverkeeper. We're fortunate here in the Chesapeake Bay region. I believe we have 17 waterkeepers from Assateague all the way up to the New York, Pennsylvania border. And just to talk about our watershed for a while, the Susquehanna from Otsego to the Chesapeake, we have 6 major subbasins. So our territory, we cover from Sealands Grove to the Chesapeake Bay, but we also cover the Juniata watershed, which I'm sure, as most viewers may know, and you guys know, that's a huge watershed. I mean, you're talking Raystown Lake, all the way to the Susquehanna, and, looking east to west, you're looking at Lancaster to Bedford County. So we serve 22 counties in Pennsylvania. We serve 2 in Maryland, Hartford and Cecil. And it's the watershed, and the territory itself is a little over 8,500 square miles.
Wow.
So it's not just the river, it's every single little creek and stream and brook and tributary that feeds it, from headwaters all the way down to where it dumps into the river. So, it's a pretty big territory.
And I know just like kind of following along on social media and stuff, like seeing you out weed whacking a bank, doing vegetation maintenance and stuff. How do you even begin to tackle the amount of shoreline that you have and that kind of thing? Like, how does
that program? I mean, the Army Corps of Engineers, they essentially they control the city of York and the Codorus Creek that runs through it. And that project was long time ago. So they had flood control, they have walls and riprap and levees, where for the longest time they always sprayed herbicides along the banks of the creek, so they can visually inspect all of that area to make sure that those flood control levees and walls are working. And if they need repair, they know when it needs repair. So herbicide application was, the go-to, and still is. We have a majority of the creek that we perform vegetation maintenance, but there's still areas of the creek that they still do spray. But at least we have the heart of York City, then where the Codorus Creek runs through it. But we manually chop and trim the vegetation to keep them from spraying herbicides. And, to be quite honest, when I came here, we weren't doing that. And when you went downtown, you can see, that it almost looked like a barren wasteland, because all you could see was like the riprap and rocks and then this channel of creek. And you're like, well, what's this? And so now when you go to York City and you look at the creek, it's green, right? So, we have vegetation all around the creek. We have to chop it, which is counterintuitive. Some people might say, well, why are you chopping? You're not supposed to chop vegetation that's along the creek. It's supposed to act as a buffer. But, if we didn't do that, they'd spray. But for me, what I've seen and what I've noticed over the last 8 years of me doing it is there's less trash. right? So you do see some trash, you know, around the bridges a little bit, but you know, we used to run cleanups through there all the time and pick up so much stuff. But now, you know, if people see that it's green and that it's being maintained and taken care of for, it's a little, you know, you appreciate it just a little bit more. That makes you maybe not throw that plastic bottle over the side and down the bank. So that's one of the positives from it, other than keeping a green downtown and keeping that vegetation there, which also allows insects to thrive. And, you know, you got space for snakes to come out and, you know, get some warmth and, you know, still be covered. And, you know, you have turtles that come around and ducks come around and, you know, they eat the vegetation that we chop. So it does provide some habitat, at least, for some of the local species too. Interesting.
And I know just growing up, you know, I remember when I was little and people would talk about the Cadorus Creek and like it was a negative connotation.
Yeah.
And now I definitely think, I mean, with the rail trail running right next to it at parts, I mean, I've heard, you know, better things about it now. So, I mean, it's definitely making a difference, I think, for sure. And
yeah, I mean, it's improved over the years. They called it the Inky Stinky. And it's well, we have a paper mill that's close by. That's why it was called the Inky Stinky, because the paper mill, you know, there was a lot of pollution coming from that paper mill, which, you know, turned that creek black. You know, you had horrible stench to it. You know, and one of the earlier successes to the predecessor of our organization was like we had the Cadorus Creek Improvement Partnership, which my predecessor, the Riverkeeper before me, started in the early 2000s, and they were involved in filing a lawsuit against PH Glatfelter, which is the paper mill in Spring Grove. Mm-hmm. So they, you know, that lawsuit winded up in, I believe, a settlement that they had to, you know, install over $100 million worth of new equipment to treat their effluent. But, you know, still to this day, we're still seeing a little bit of issue up there. And but the creek is, you know, it's a lot healthier than what it was decades ago, for sure.
And I know, at least I kind of took for granted thinking that, you know, when you hear about companies polluting the river and stuff, you know, like raw sewage dumping in at certain spots and kind of things kind of like that, you think, oh, well, that was back in like the 30s or whatever. And we've come a long way from that. But then you hear news stories where, you know, a company just got busted for doing that last year, you know. So, you know, you take for granted that it's not happening, but it really is, you know, and that's kind of scary.
Yeah, and we had you know, the Federal Clean Water Act that was enacted in 1972, and you know that has done a lot for this country, and particularly wastewater. I mean, we have a lot more sewage treatment plants that are doing a better job, but again, we still have cities that still have old pipes from the early 1900s that are, you know, combined, and you have stormwater and, you know, raw sewage entering the same pipe. And when we get rain events, and even when we don't, you know, we see elevated levels of bacteria in the river, and that's a huge problem, right? And especially for the capital of our state, you know, which is a whole nother hour-long conversation. We can get into it if you want.
That's what I was referring to. And then, you know, when I first heard that, I was like shocked. I'm like, that is still happening? What the heck? You know, but it makes sense if, you know, nobody was policing it until, you know, now. And, you know, I mean, again, is it an easy fix to that problem? No, because there's probably tons and tons and tons of these old pipes and stuff running everywhere. So, but is it worthwhile fixing? I hope so, because if you spend any time in the river, you don't want to be swimming around in something that came out of a sewer pipe, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and, you know, when if anyone has done any research around, you know, smallmouth bass and some of the diseases that they have and the intersex characteristics, I mean, you know, look at Vicki Blazer's work from the USGS. She has done incredible work and research, and a lot of her research has pointed towards us, really, you know, and what we're flushing down the toilet and what winds up being, you know, entered into the river. I mean, you know, a concoction of, you know, not just bacteria, but pharmaceuticals. I mean, anything that comes out of our body is eventually flushed down the line and winds up into a water body if it's not, properly and effectively treated. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised for us to see smallmouth, male smallmouth bass with eggs in their testes if, a lot of what is coming out of us is winding up into the water as well. I mean, fish are going to ingest that, and and we're seeing it, and it's still relevant today. Especially we've seen it more so in the winter months. We see a lot more of the melanistic spots on bass. We see a lot more of the mucoid lesions and fungus, and a lot more of that during the wintertime. And, my hypothesis has always been, well, the fish are less active. They're probably hunkering down on the bottom a little bit more. They're probably finding shelter, in deeper holes, right? So, in those deeper holes, I'm sure there's sediment that's been built up over time that's probably still has, contamination and pollutants that are in it. And, they might be eating stuff off the bottom. So I think a lot of that comes in. It's all pollution related, in my opinion. When 2004 and 2005 hit, and, we had a decimated fishery, and a lot of that was because the previous years we were essentially, I believe, in a drought or close to it. We hadn't had a lot of rain, and then all of a sudden we got dumped on, and the river was flush full of chemicals and pollutants, and we had a massive, essentially a fish kill. And it can happen at any point in time. I mean, we responded to Donegal Creek a couple years ago, where a bunch of trout died. Mm-hmm. And we went and I investigated, and I talked to some of the local farmers and some of the local people there. And, they had said, well, that farmer over there just applied herbicides yesterday and it rained. So was that a likely cause of that fish kill? Maybe, whatever's running off the land and into the water is definitely going to affect fish. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, like that goes back to the whole, the use of DDT. Yeah. That would be absorbed into the fish, and then the eagles would eat the fish, and then as soon as they land on their nest to sit on their eggs, the shells would just crack.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. So, there's a couple of things conservation-wise that we wanted to talk about. So first of all, how do we support our river keepers? Like I want to get to, how we as anglers can try and work on cleaning up our water, and whatever that means. If it means not, we'll talk about, making sure you retrieve whatever you put into the water, if at all possible. But in general, what's the best way to support you as our river keeper?
I mean, honestly, so right now we're at the point of, and I want to tell folks too, a vision that I have for this organization. And I go back to talking about those 6 major subbasins of the river. So we don't have coverage as far as a river keeper goes in New York. Nowhere in New York do we have a water keeper or river keeper. So we have the Lower Susquehanna covered. We have the Juniata covered, quote unquote. It's very far from me to get the Juniata. We have a Middle Susquehanna Riverkeeper, but he also has the West Branch. I see us growing to the point where we almost emulate some other waterkeeper organizations where they have one organization, but they have multiple riverkeepers underneath that said one organization. So, I have this vision of a Susquehanna Riverkeeper network where we have waterkeepers all the way from Otsego to the Bay, and each sub watershed is covered. So in order for me to fulfill that dream that I have, we need help, and it comes down to volunteer support, coming out to our events, helping us out, in the office, helping us out with fundraising, helping us out with planning stuff and our programs. And we need dollars too. I mean, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. All waterkeeper organizations are nonprofits. And originally, we were first started at the request of citizens, that felt we needed a stronger advocate for this watershed and an advocate that would hold polluters to task. And in order for you to essentially become a waterkeeper, you have to set up your own nonprofit. So, you know, we don't receive any state or federal funding. We're totally supported by donations and grants, any income we get from events, merchandise we sell, and we're a membership-based organization. So this is the really most important thing about what we do and how we're supported is that we're member supported. You know, I'm a big fan of XPN. I love XPN. I'm a member of XPN, and I love the music that they play. You know, and I support them because, you know, I like what they do. Well, I like what they're doing, and I get to hear a lot of cool music. And, you know, I give them $10 a month, right? And they, you know, and it's worth it for me. And I don't need it for the T-shirt. I don't need it for the mug or whatever they're going to send you. I donate to them because I appreciate what they're doing and what they're doing to my ears, right? So, but for us, it's the same way in that we're member supported. And what makes us really unique as a member supported organization is that we represent our members. So like, let's say, Sean, you have a creek that's running through your backyard. And let's say, Susie, you're just above him, right? And you guys are neighbors. And so let's say all of a sudden, you know, there's some kind of pollution source that's above you guys and it's coming downstream and it's affecting, you know, your ability to swim, to fish, to drink, you know, to bring your dogs down there and your kids down there and to splash around like you normally would. Well, if you're a member of the Lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper Association, and let's say, you know, we were to take action against that polluter, well, you get to step in and you get to directly be involved as a standing witness to whatever legal action we may put forth. So if we were to sue that polluter for violations, and if they were violating the law, you know, you get to document, you get to say to the court, Sean, I am affected by said pollution because of this, this, and that. It's taken away my ability to enjoy this public resource as I normally should and would. Same thing for you, Susie. And then all of a sudden, you know, when we're, you know, essentially in court, we have standing alone as a, you know, 501c3 nonprofit and an organization whose mission is dedicated to protecting and improving the health of the river. But when we have members that are also affected, the court sees that and says, oh, wow, you guys have people that are being affected by this pollution. Well, it gives us a little bit more clout. And also, too, I mean, every single citizen has the right under the Clean Water Act to file citizen suits. You know, if your rights are being taken away and if you can't enjoy a water body as you normally would, everybody has the right to file a citizen suit. And when you're members of Lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper Association, we get to help you out with that. And we get to essentially do it all for you. You know, so, you know, again, that's why we need members. We need people that are going to support the mission and to be represented by us. But not only that, we have a lot when it comes to programming again, and we just need some support there too, especially with smallmouth bass. I mean, we have a smallmouth bass monitoring program where we're using an app to take a look at some of the fish that may be sick if they're showing signs of disease. And we use an app that timestamps and geolocates fish that allows us to hopefully, you know, reveal a pattern of where some of these, you know, fish might be and where they're going and all that. But yeah, and being the eyes and ears, you know, we need, especially anglers. I mean, anglers are the ones that are out in the water the most. I mean, unless you're an avid paddler and if you just like to, you know, sightsee and walk down trails and take in nature and, you know, bird watch or etc. But I mean, anglers they're on the water and they're covering water. So, you know, obviously I have 8,500 square miles. I can't be everywhere at the same time. So we really rely on our members and, you know, members of the public to inform us if there's any issues that are going on that might be, you know, out of whack. I mean, you know, we want to know if you're smelling stuff that doesn't smell right. You know, we want to make sure that you show us stuff that doesn't look right. You know, and there's follow-up that we can do where we come out and investigate and take water samples if needed and contact our state agencies and do the follow-up and kind of take it from there. But we need people that are out there, you know, raising and, you know, letting people know that something might be going on.
Awesome. For anybody who's outside of the Lower Susquehanna Riverkeepers, how do they find their local Riverkeepers if there is one?
Yeah, so I didn't mention that. Waterkeeper Alliance is this global movement, and they've been around since 1998. So just really quick, I want to touch on it because it's a cool story. The Waterkeeper and the movement started in the 1960s, and it started on the Hudson River. And the Hudson River was the laughing stock of this country. It was made fun of on Saturday Night Live. It was so polluted that fishermen were having difficulties harvesting and, catching and fish and harvesting shellfish, etc. And they just got sick of it. They got sick of how much pollution was up there. I mean, we're talking about the textile industries, oil and gas, railroad, power plants, wastewater plants that were just dumping raw sewage into the river. I mean, they had so many issues there. So they banded together and they formed what was called the Hudson River Fishermen's Association. And they had some ideas. Originally, they wanted to take mattresses and shove them up the pipes of these, where like the train yards were, in the local hump yards. They wanted to put mattresses to clog it, so all their oil and stuff would flow back onto their land rather than going into the river. They had really cool ideas about getting rafts and putting dynamite on these rafts and just sending them into the intakes of these power plants to blow up these power. So obviously they didn't go through with that because they consulted attorneys and they told them, you probably shouldn't break the law. You should probably be holding these people accountable to the law. But at that point, the Clean Water Act was informed, but later they started doing a lot of work and gathering data and research, and they started suing polluters and they started winning. And it was in 1983 that Hudson Riverkeeper was officially formed as the first waterkeeper organization in the entire world. So in the late 90s, then Waterkeeper Alliance was formed. Bobby Kennedy Jr. was president for a very long time, then helped found and mold that organization. And now, we have over 320 or close to 350 waterkeepers across the world. So what people should do is go to Waterkeeper Alliance. I think it's waterkeeperalliance.org, or just look up Waterkeeper Alliance. And there should be a really cool function or a tool on their website where you can essentially put in your address or put in an area, and it'll spit out whoever your waterkeeper is. So, so if you're listening outside of Lower Susquehanna, just go there and see who's there. Make connections with them, and just chat with them. We're here, doing the grunt work. We need all the help we can get. So, definitely reach out.
And we'll make sure we include that link in the show notes. So anybody who wants to look that up, once this goes live, just check out the show notes, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube. And, we'll make sure we include that in there. So, all right. So that's kind of the, what any person can do. But as anglers, this is the part where, thinking about this show, and I knew it was coming, I, was having a little bit of a guilty conscience for, fishing soft plastics as much as I do, because as part of my creek cleanup, one of the things we started doing was microplastic monitoring, where we sample the water and check for the, microplastics in the water. And I'm like, what, that can't be helping when I'm doing that. So I kind of felt a little twinge of guilt there. And, we've talked about, I know like California doesn't allow like lead sinkers and stuff like that. And we're not quite there yet. I don't know if that's something, that could be coming or what, but I know. So what, as anglers, what can we do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty as charged, man. I use soft plastics. I mean, I'm not going to hide it, but when I'm on the river, if I'm fishing, I try to do the very best I can to retrieve every single, lure that I'm throwing, so if I'm snagged, I'm going out of the way to, paddle upstream, or to make sure that I'm getting around whatever rock or whatever is caught. Or if there's a branch, I'm going to that branch. And if the water is icy cold, well, guess what? My arm's going straight into that icy cold water, and I'm grabbing that lure out. So, busting off and just saying, forget it, I'll tie a new one. You're leaving that plastic in there, and it's going to sit there. And, it's definitely not good for the environment, as we're seeing. There's a lot of research around plastics and what it does, not just to aquatic species, but us as well. there's water intakes all around the Lower Susquehanna, and we're drinking river water. So essentially, whatever we put in there is eventually coming back into our body. So even though it's treated, but so yeah, that's one of the main things that I just live by, is just retrieving anything and doing the best I can to retrieve whatever I throw. Sometimes like this last week, we had a drawdown, Lake Clark. So in the Lower Susquehanna, for folks who don't know, we do have 4 major hydroelectric dams. So essentially, we have reservoirs behind those dams. And this last week, one of the dams had to perform some routine inspection and maintenance and some repairs. So they drew the water down, and I go out there as soon as they did it, and I scurry the banks and I look for treasures. And my treasures are old plugs and plastics and lures that are stuck in rocks and caught in a limb in a tree, and I'm taking them home and I'm repurposing them, and finders keepers, losers weepies. So I'll show, I'll buff them out, and I'll throw some new trebles on them, or I'll throw a new single hook on them. And I'll use them again. But, so that's kind of the stuff that I do. And it's fun. I mean, you go out there and find cool stuff, not just fishing lures. You can find all kinds of stuff, arrowheads. And, I found an anchor the other day that I'm going to repurpose.
Wow.
So again, I don't, soft plastics for fishermen, they're not going anywhere. We're still going to use them. But, making sure that we minimize the impact of our fishing by doing the best we can to retrieve those snagged lures. I mean, it's a bummer because, especially when you're kayaking, if we don't have brakes, right? Unless you're using, we don't have motors. Some people have motors, but, so do the extra work. Take that paddle upstream, grab your lure. You're going to thank yourself anyway, because you just saved yourself money. Unless you like paying, money every week for new lures and new rigs and all that. I mean, I don't, so I try to get back whatever I throw in.
No, I think that's a great idea. And I know I actually have a cup holder, like a Yak Attack cup that I put on my kayak, not so much to hold a cup, but that's where my trash goes, So if I rip off a soft plastic, this crawl got a claw missing, ripped off, then I'll, instead of just chucking it in the water, I'll put it in that cup holder, and that's, where I put all my trash, so that I know when I get off the water, it's going where it's supposed to be. I know one of the things that I've seen a lot more of around at least our parts of the river is they have a lot of places where you can put used fishing line instead of just
say that, yeah.
Yeah.
At least 3 or 4 of the places that I fish along the river have these kind of, it's like a PVC pipe that you can, instead of just, letting your line go in the water, because all the different things that, aside from being super annoying when you're casting and get snagged on somebody else's line, it's so bad for so many different things to put that in the water. So, I think that's one of the things that I thought was really cool the first time I saw it. And now, so if I do, if I'm, retrieving a crankbait or something and I snag on somebody else's line, I try to pull as much of that out as I can and, stuff it in that pipe when I get off the water. Cause, as much of that stuff as you can get out. And I think just picking up trash in general. I mean, I know a couple of kayakers I know just carry a bag on their kayak, so that if they run across trash, they'll just pick it up and, so.
Yeah. And that's, that should be common practice. And in fact, looking at some of these tournaments, it'd be pretty cool to have a side pot, not for the biggest fish, but hey, how much trash did you pick up?
We, our local club KBL, as part of a way to earn monthly points, we used to do to earn, 10 additional points towards your AOI to go to like your local waters area or whatever, and just collect as much trash as you can to try to fill a kitchen bag. And we had a lot of turnout for that, which was awesome to see.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, fishing and like Sean was saying before, we have this microplastics monitoring program, and it was funny. One of our volunteers, he fishes a pretty not famous, but really well-known creek that's got decent trout life. And he was finding, monofilament and fluorocarbon tippet, and he knew it was. And, so, and the effects of plastics, on our bodies is, there's a lot going on there that, might be safe for a different time, but let's just say it's not doing good, for our bodies, and especially for fish. I mean, we're eating that fish, we're ingesting that plastic. I think Sean, we've heard this before, that I think the statistic is, even without, let's just say we're eating like a credit card's worth of plastic, like every 2 weeks or whatever it is. It's some crazy statistic like that.
And it's not hard to believe, because we do our sampling once a month. So I go to my creek once a month, and I take a water sampling jug, about I don't even know how many liters it is, but just in that sample, and then we filter that through a filter and take a look, and we check to see what microplastics we find in that. And every month in that sample, I find microplastics, and that's just one tiny little jug of water that comes out of one creek. If I'm finding that much in just that one sample, that just lets you know how prevalent it is. And that was shocking to me. Like, I couldn't believe. I was like, oh, maybe every once in a while we'll find something, but no, it's pretty much every sample I'm finding multiple, whether it's fibers. I haven't found a ton of beads yet, but I know, we found them as a group, and so they're definitely there. But just the amount that I'm seeing was eye-opening to me for sure. So
yeah.
What would you say that your would be like the top 5 polluters to like the Susquehanna or the other rivers and creeks?
So some of the biggest cases we're working on right now, and I'll name the first one because we've been working on it since 2009. That's how far this one goes back. Jeez. So hydroelectric dam relicensing is a beast, because these dams, they're federally licensed through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And under the Clean Water Act, like our local wastewater treatment plants, or let's just say like Modern Landfill that's dumping into Kreitz Creek, and their wastewater treatment plants, like they all have to be permitted every 5 years, right? But these federal licensed dams, they're looking at anywhere from 30 to 50-year licenses.
Jeez.
So it's a long time, and the process that all the agencies and the citizens groups go through when relicensing these dams, it's immense. I mean, even before a dam is up for relicense, 5 years prior to that, they begin what's called the integrated licensing process, where they start doing the studies and they start looking at, all right, what are the effects of this dam on local water quality, and on recreation, and on the fisheries and migratory fish, and all of that. And in this case, we had there's a lot going on. Like just recently, we filed a lawsuit against the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission for issuing a license that was unlawful for the dam, and we're actually going for oral arguments next Tuesday in DC Circuit Court. So that's one really big issue that's been going on for a while, and it's just such a long story. If anyone wants to hear more about it, call me. There's a lot going on there. You can imagine what happens when a dam owner is essentially let off scot-free for 50 years. It doesn't have to be responsible for making sure that their dam operates in a way that doesn't affect downstream communities and or migratory communities coming upstream. Like shad and herring and American eels and all that. So that's a big one. We touched on it a little bit, but the combined sewer overflow and sewage entering the river from our state capital in Harrisburg, that's right up there as well. That's a very, it's a very tough issue because, to fix it, it's going to cost a lot. The city has been in disrepair for a long time. The authority who had control of the sewer system before never took care of it. They neglected it. It wasn't maintained. for decades. So we have a lot of pipes within the city that are high risk for failure. There are a lot of pipes that are, that are essentially almost broken. So there's some groundwater infiltration, and there's just a lot there that needs to be addressed. And again, these are ongoing violations. So with that, we filed a motion to intervene in an old stagnant lawsuit from 2015, where the DEP and EPA sued the city and Capital Region Water for those violations. But since 2015, nothing's really been done about it. So with that, we started water quality monitoring all around the city and on Paxton Creek as well, and on the Susquehanna. And so the court and the judge ruled in our favor and granted us intervention. So now we're part of that lawsuit. And we get to be involved in discussions and kind of set the stage for how things should be. And, it's kind of up to the other parties to agree or disagree, but we have really great people on staff, that are helping it, not my staff, but that are on the team. Environmental Integrity Project. They just have excellent attorneys. We have really good engineers that are involved. So that's another big one. We sued Hanover Foods last year. And so that's an ongoing case. There's a lot going on there. You had a company that neglected their wastewater treatment plant for a long time, and they don't have a good working knowledge of the systems and how it all works, and they have poor management and poor operations and poor procedures, and they need some help with getting themselves back on track and getting the correct systems in place and getting the personnel that's going to be able to operate their facility in a correct way, so they stop violating the law. That's another big one.
So when you think about, when you hear like on the news about these cities that have water crises, I forget who was the last one that just happened not too long ago. Jackson.
Yeah, Mississippi.
How close is that something that could happen, or how close is that? Like, what's the reality of that?
I don't know. I mean, it could happen anywhere. Like take Flint, Michigan. Flint was another big one. And I think, what happened there was that, they had to do some infrastructure work and, some other things and they looked at it and they put the bids out and they went with the cheapest bid and did it cheap and messed up their entire water system. Yeah. And there was a lot of politics involved, and, regulations weren't really there. And, they kind of just, skipped the beat. They just went cheap and really messed up that whole area. Can it happen? It can happen anywhere. I mean,
you look out west and see what's happening out west, like Lake Mead, like it's almost gone.
And, we have to remember this too. I mean, we have laws that are here to protect our water, to protect our right to it, and, to protect our aquatic species. But, we've seen a tremendous attack on, those rights over the last 5 years. I mean, here we're seeing there's a case right now, Sackett versus the EPA, I believe, or it's in the Supreme Court right now, and that case would essentially take away protections for wetlands and other water bodies. And these are federally protected waters. Waters of the United States, it covers a vast majority of our waters. So when we have wetlands that are no longer going to be protected, and intermittent streams and ephemeral streams and waters that cross state lines that all of a sudden lose federal protection, that means that really any polluter can come in and set up shop.
Jeez.
So, with those protections being gone, it's going to be a lot less, it's going to be a lot more likely that, more people can roll in and essentially just get away with polluting a water body, because there's nothing behind that water body to make sure that the Clean Water Act is in full effect and protecting it the way it should. Excuse me. So, but there's been massive attacks, on the Clean Water Act and different provisions of it. I mean, there's multiple provisions and statutes of the Clean Water Act, and we need to make sure that they remain intact because our livelihoods are at stake, and and polluters too. Like an example that we had with a slaughterhouse, we sued a slaughterhouse in Lebanon County, Keystone Protein Plant, and they were violating the law for years. I mean, it was almost a decade. And they entered into a consent order with the state in 2012, and they were supposed to upgrade their treatment plant in 2016. And 2016 came around, and they never did anything. They just they didn't do anything. And so they entered into a second consent order with the state, and then they didn't do anything, and time went by. So we saw that, and we said, well, they have to be held accountable. So we filed a lawsuit against them. The court and the judge ruled in our favor, and they violated the law this many times. And they had to pay, a significant penalty, and they had to make sure that their wastewater treatment plant was up to snuff, and they had to correct those violations, and they did. But guess what? If we hadn't filed a lawsuit, where would they be right now? Would they still be violating? Maybe. But the other thing that people may not get is that if a polluter does not upgrade or does not conform to a permit or does not follow along with a consent order, there's an economic benefit that these companies are receiving. So, with modern landfill, they have this, you have Crates Creek that's being dumped in every 24/7 and constant violations. Well, how much of an economic benefit, did they receive off of not, making sure that their water is clean enough to be discharged into a water body? It's huge. I mean, Keystone Protein, we settled for $1 million, and that was, essentially the economic benefit that they received in not following the law and, continuous violations. So, that's a big piece to it. If they're not upgrading their things, and they keep getting away with it, there has to be, they have to pay.
So you'd think it would make sense to them to, rather than pay it out later, just pay it and get it done and conform to the laws,
Yeah.
It seems like common sense, but I guess,
but
unfortunately.
But there's states, all over the country, companies, they'll just get away with it. They'll get away with it because there's nobody there to hold their feet to the fire. And, that's what waterkeepers are here to do. We're here to hold those polluters' feet to the fire. Like, hey, you can't do this. You need to correct what you're doing, and you also need to pay. Like, you can't just get away with it, and you can't get away with it for years and years and years. We filed a lawsuit against the state in 2016 because there were 12 coal-fired power plants in the state that hadn't had a reissued permit to them under that 5-year time frame I mentioned. Some of those coal-fired power plants hadn't had a new permit in 15, 20 years. So with that, those permits are, they're operating under effluent limits from 20 years ago. And so when we have, as years go by, people get smarter and we get new technology and we have things to make water quality better and all that. And if they're acting off of an old permit that doesn't have all that new technology and those new limits that are maybe set by the federal or state government, they can still operate on the old permit. And, so we call those zombie permits when they're
because nobody knows to look for them, right? Yes.
Right. And I was just going to kind of ask a little bit about that too, for companies that are looking to, build and establish, whether it be like a big company or small company, have you guys seen better like permit processes and like water quality protection processes implemented, like in the past years and whatnot?
I mean, all right, so let's take it back to like the Bush Jr. years, like and before that. Like for the last 20 years, funding has been slashed and cut to all of the agencies. Like take Pennsylvania DEP, right? So their funding has been slashed almost 70%. I don't even know where the percentage is at, but it's a lot. So their ability to perform inspections, their ability to produce a permit, their ability to take legal action against a polluter, it's just not there as it maybe was once there before. So no, I mean the lack of enforcement is extremely high. You know, and here we are in 2022, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act. You know, and we need to see our state agencies step up. We need to see the EPA step up and do their job and enforce the law. You know, if let's say in a perfect world, you know, the DEP and EPA had adequate staff and the resources, and, you know, they were actually performing inspections the way they should and producing permits the way they should, and actually did water quality monitoring, and you know, I'd be out of the job, right? Why would you need me?
Right.
So, you know, but we don't have that. We don't have that at all. I mean, the lack of, you know, enforcement is way down. You know, I remember when we were in COVID, I was trying to get a state agency to help me out with water sampling, and they decided, well, it was because of COVID that they couldn't take water samples. And meanwhile, the whole time I'm using a lab, you know, because of the resources. You know, they you know, who's going to do it and who's going to follow up? So it's tough. You know, I think their hands are full. You know, but let's be honest, politics play a big role in Pennsylvania. You know, however much wise want to get into that. I mean, but
well, you know, we got another 4 hours. No.
I mean, we have, you know, and you know, so this year we saw, you know, a significant investment into clean water, more so than we've seen in previous years. But honestly, it was all because of the money trickling in from, you know, the infrastructure money and some of the COVID relief funding and the old American Rescue Plan money that's still sitting around in municipalities and counties and all that. But, you know, clean water got some decent funding this year, but, you know, those legislators need to put their money where their mouths are and, you know, actually support it, not this year, but continuously. We need to see those investments made year after year after year after year, because again, this is the only water we got. And if we don't protect it, you know, we're all screwed. So yeah, political will is also it plays a huge role in protecting our water. And we need to have the political will, you know, of our legislative bodies and the General Assembly that knows how important it is and funds it. You know, Harrisburg and the combined sewer overflow situation, you know, there's a stormwater fee that's now being paid by all the residents and nonprofits and businesses all around the city, and the state's being billed $32,000+ a month because of the impervious surface that they have in the city. I mean, they own 40% of the real estate, you know, and they're not paying a penny. You know, they have buckets of money in all kinds of different funds. Fork it up.
Right.
You know, so it's just, it plays a big part in it, you know, as far as the funding, the resources for the state, federal agencies, but the political will has to be there. If it's not there, I think we all know that, you know, things go on behind the scenes that make others make decisions that they might not normally make. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So not only should you reach out to your local riverkeeper, but also reach out to your representatives and let them know, you know, hey, this is something we're concerned about. This is something we want you, you know, to focus on or to be aware of, you know, and you know, as much as you can get that awareness out there, you know, the more people who know and can kind of see that, the better, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, we're a little over an hour. Bottom line here, like what, you know, if you could, you know, say one thing to every person, you know, say we, you know, get, I don't know how many views on this. What's one thing you would tell everyone to do to help you protect our waterway? You know, not just, you know, Susquehanna, but, you know, all across our nation and, you know, anybody who happens to hear this.
I would say just stay informed and be open to being educated on what's going on. I mean, like I said, and, you know, we can talk from hours and hours and hours on more of these issues, but there's a lot going on. So, if you're in my territory, check out our website, lowsusriverkeeper.org. If you're on Facebook and Instagram, you can check us out there, Lower Susquehanna Riverkeeper Association. Just follow the work. Check out some of the issues we're working on, some of the programs we're doing, and become a member. I mean, we're looking for any support that we can get. We're member supported. We have monthly membership. It's a really cool way to not be able to invest a decent chunk at one time. So you can become a member for $5 a month. $5 a month is not too much to ask. And for us, it means a lot. Like that $5 a month member. And if we have 100 of those people giving $5 a month, that really does a lot for us. And, that's what we're looking to get is more support in the form of donors and members, and volunteers too. So if you're in this area and you see an event we have coming, we see an event we have going on, just come out, check it out, see what we're all about. And, come up to me, chat with me. My life's an open book. We can chat about anything and everything. I've got a lot of life experiences in this area and beyond. So, we can shoot the stuff and talk about all kinds of stuff. But yeah, we're looking for members, for donors, for volunteers. Check out our work. If you're not in the Lower Susquehanna watershed, reach out to your local waterkeeper. Check out their website. Check out their Facebook page. See what they're doing. Attend the events. And get involved. Take action. The most important thing I would say for people is that we all have a voice. We all can open up our mouths and speak. But when we take on big corporate polluters or whoever may be violating the law and subjecting us to, water pollution, we as a community can stand up and stop that. I've seen it. I've been seeing it the last couple months. I mean, we've had cases here locally where 1,000 people showed up to a meeting and, they were supposed to approve something that the township and the people of the township didn't want approved, and they didn't approve it because there was so much public outcry and people that were so against it that, the local leaders and the supervisors of the township, they have to listen to their constituents. They have to listen to the local people that are saying, no, we don't want this. Don't do it. Because they're going to lose sleep at night if they go against that, and they don't want that. Right. So our voices matter. And when we come together as a community and, put all those voices together, trust me, it gets pretty damn loud. And we can cause a pretty big fuss when it comes to protecting our water. So, that's the most important thing. I do this 24/7, day in, day out. I live, breathe, eat, and sleep this work. I mean, so. And that goes the same with all the other waterkeepers. We are tireless, we are hungry, and we are, ready to take action whenever we have the opportunity. We're go-getters, and we get stuff done. So if you want to be part of that, you want to be part of the movement, reach out.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for what you do and the role that you play in, helping us protect our waters. And guys, if you want this resource to be around for you to enjoy and for your kids to enjoy and for generations, we got to start, and we got to make it a priority. Or, this sport that we love and, that, wakes us up and gets us so motivated, it can be gone. And we'll, so it's definitely something important. And Ted, thanks for coming on and helping us, kind of raise awareness for that. And definitely, if you want to hang on a little bit after we end the show, I'll get, all the links and everything that you talked about. And we'll make sure we include them in the show notes so folks can find that. And guys, just make sure you check out the links and get involved and make your voices heard, because it's super, super important. So any parting words for either of you?
Big thanks, man. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with you guys. Hope people saw some value in the work that we're doing and the work that other people are doing around the world. I mean, you got people, we're talking all over the world doing this stuff.
That's awesome.
And we need to shed a little bit more light on all those warriors that are out there.
Yes,
definitely. All right, guys. Well, make sure you tune in to check out the show notes and support your local Riverkeepers and all the efforts that they're putting in. And as always, thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Bass Fishing for Noobs here on the Paddle and Fin podcast, where we bring you the techniques, the tricks, and the tips to help you rip more lips. You guys have a good night.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode here on Paddle and Fin. Be sure to drop a 5-star rating, a thumbs up, or smash that subscribe button on any platform you're listening in on. Be sure to check us out on Waypoint TV, waypointtv.com. Make sure you sign up for the Fantasy Kayak Fishing League at paddleandfin.com/fantasy. You can support this show through Patreon, patreon.com/paddleandfin. Don't forget to check out the website, paddleandfin.com. Catch us on YouTube. If you got a question, comment, or want to see a future guest on the show, be sure to email us at paddleandfin@gmail.com. Shout out to our show supporters, Yak Gadget. You can check out all the fine kayak accessories at yakgadget.com. Pelican Professional. For all your cases, coolers, and lighting needs, go to pelican.com. Rocktown Adventures, your Midwest premier paddle sports destination. Go to rocktownadventures.com. Eastport Marina, the beautiful destination on Dale Hollow Lake. If you're looking for lodging, kayaks, kayak accessories, or anything fishing related on the beautiful Dale Hollow Lake, go to eastport.info. And Jigmasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to jigmasters.com and fill your tackle boxes